This is Toby Hockenberry. This is my presentation for History 225 on my paper, It is Time to End UN and US Imposed Sanctions on Iran. Right, Iran identifies themselves as Persian, not Arab. This is very important in understanding where they stand in the Middle East and in the Arab world in general. They're majority Shia Islam, though there are other many sects of Muslims and Christians in Iran. But their government is unitary theocratic presidential republic. So they are a theocratic state. Their national, their foreign relations, their national identity, their laws. It's all dictated by the Shia interpretation of the Quran. So that's another important thing to understand in how they operate in the Middle East. They support a lot of Shia states, Shia governments, and don't really have a lot of trust of Sunni states and Sunni governments. They have the largest natural gas supply and fourth largest oil reserves in the world. They're a huge oil dependent state, and they have the potential to be a huge oil exporting state. But sanctions have really put a damper on that, and that's the point of sanctions. They target the economies of the states. They are seen in the West as some rogue terrorist sponsoring state that wants to destroy Israel and maybe destroy the world. I don't know. But they're a member of many international organizations, to include the UN. But it's kind of a weird relationship and how they stand and their role in these organizations. But nevertheless, they're still members of them and still play a role in them. Since 1979, of course, U.S.-Iranian relations have been in shambles. This hasn't really gotten any better since the 2000s, when Iran made it clear it had nuclear goals that it claims is for economic reasons of generating electricity and power, and the U.S. and Israel claim it's trying to build nuclear weapons to launch specifically into Israel and use them as leverage in their standing in the Middle East. So it's continued to defy sanctions and weapons inspectors and U.S.'s requests and UN's requests, and it's just kind of a hard-headed, stubborn mess of many agendas and national interests coming to a head. Who is ultimately affected by sanctions? Well, the people are. People feel these sanctions in multiple ways. In Iraq, post-Gulf War, the people of Iraq, specifically the Shia, felt it, and there's reports of hundreds of thousands of deaths as a result of sanctions. Those numbers can't be confirmed right now, but there's many articles on them. Saddam kind of retained his power and did what he wanted to do. Sanctions most likely had an effect on his weapons of mass destruction capabilities, but economically, Iraq is still feeling the devastating effect of those sanctions. Now we're kind of seeing the same thing in Iran, where the people are being affected. Seeing unemployment rates, especially in the younger generation, are huge. And I mean, and then we get into the medical side where Iran is definitely feeling the effect of sanctions in its medical field, and this is where people really feel the biggest effect. Um, so governments uh, maintain their national interest goals, and the people ultimately suffer. And there's even an effect on the U.S. economy to these sanctions. Again, job losses, um, revenue, imports of oil, just all kinds of effects. And specifically, Iran will still attain its goals through black markets and through illegal means, which doesn't mean it's a terrorist state or anything. It just means it finds ways of maintaining its national interests and through other means, and this is very dangerous and for everybody involved. All right, well, basically, Iran has the capabilities of being a huge, powerful player in the global economy. Um, but these sanctions are really having a devastating effect on its capabilities of doing that and the people. Um, and there's many parties to blame here. It's not just the sanctions itself. The government itself has um, has some blame and plays a large role. Another thing that I want to bring up was the rise of ISIS in the Middle East. ISIS being a Sunni organization, extremist Sunni organization, and Iran being Shia, is really feeling a threat of ISIS right now, specifically in Iraq and Syria. Iran has supported Syria for years and still supports the Syrian government in the civil war, but now ISIS controls over 50% of Syria and is gaining ground in Iraq, and this is a huge threat to Iran. But it is also a threat to the U.S., and the U.S. needs to come to terms with this very quickly. Um, we already seen Iran and the U.S. kind of working through proxy to support Shia militias in both Iran and Syria, be it uh, the Badr Mahdi armies in Iraq or Hezbollah in Syria, or other militias in Syria. But anyway, both there's a joint interest in seeing ISIS held at bay through the Shia, and the U.S. is really having to come to terms with that. In conclusion, there's no loss of money in relieving sanctions, only gain. There's really no loss on any part. It just takes some reform of ideas on both parties, that Iran needs to be integrated into the global economy, and sanctions need to be lifted. And this rhetoric and hard-headed idea that Iran is, you know, a rogue state is old. It's outdated. We need to get over that and integrate them in the global economy. And this can happen through multilateral peace talks. Um, it can happen through the UN. It can happen through other states and powers in the region and the world. We're excited. I recommend anyone um, take a look at any of these articles, and there's some podcasts in there. There's a lot of good information, and a lot of it had to do with my understanding of what's going on with Iran, between Iran and the U.S. right now. Some good information, and thank you everyone for listening. And